Okay, so normally you see my screen, you hear my voice, so normally that should be working. How we're gonna do this, like I was saying, I don't put my webcam because generally I don't have an excellent internet connection because I live outside in a very small city in France. So sometimes the connections are not very good, so I prefer not to put the webcam on. Since there's quite a few people on the webinar, I cannot open the microphones of everybody because it makes a lot of sound and it's going to be difficult to communicate. So I'm going to do the presentation on the listening test interpretation. And then afterwards, I will open the microphones so we can, if you have questions, and we can discuss on what I would have said at the end of the presentation. So you can also write your questions on your board if you have questions, so I can look at them and read them. It's hard for me to do two things at the same time. I have a hard time reading the questions and presenting, so that's kind. So I have to do it at the end. Okay. So I'm gonna present myself for the people I haven't met. My name is Valérie. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm a Tomatis consultant for around 25 years now. I have been working with the method. So when I was asked to do a webinar on listening test interpretation, Thierry asked me about because we get a lot of questions, particularly from people who just train at the level of the listening test, because it's a hard test. And so I decided, I was thinking, what should I do? What should I say? Because I don't want to repeat what's in the notebook you got during the listening test interpretation course. So I decided I was going to do something maybe a little bit different. I don't know what will come out of it, but I will try to transmit the way I do my listening tests interpretation. So we will see what happens. Okay. So I hope everything's fine for the moment. So the way it's going to work, I was asked to do 3 modules on the listening test interpretation. So today, the first module was on the review on the different parameters of the listening test, then to speak about the listening test interpretation, and to do some case studies, some on my case studies, so I can show you how I work. Then on the second module, we will, for the persons who have registered or who will register, we will talk about programming, continue on the listening test interpretation, but then I would ask you to share your case studies, okay? Because I think that's what's important. So the second module, we will send you a table to do the interpretation of the listening test, so a table that you can fill in and put it in a PowerPoint so I can use it, and you send it back to Solange, who would then send it back to me. And like that, I can do the presentation of I can put on the screen your cases. I would open your microphone and you can present your case studies and we can discuss them. And on module 3, we will also talk about active work and the same thing, and programming, listening test interpretation, and case studies, yours. So you can share also your experiences, and if you have questions on specific test. So I'm gonna try to give you my idea of the listening test from what I received from Tomatis in a certain manner. So for Tomatis, the listening test gives information in the framework of a psychological process. Okay, a listening test is going to give us information on how the person desires or not to use the material they have available on a perceptive level. Okay, and that's why Tomatis used to say, I can have a very bad hearing and a very good listening, and on the contrary, I can have a very good hearing and a very bad listening. Okay, because it's not about hearing, it's the capacities, how I am able to use those capacities and integrate the information. So this is, Tomatis integrated this process as a psychological process. And that's why also he called his method audio psychophonology, because what goes in or out, it's going to be treated at one point by the brain, and there's going to be a psychological treatment of the information, psychological, emotional, cortical, whatever name you want to put on that. But there's a treatment that has to take place at a certain point. So hearing is the result of a perception from a stimulation that is coming from the exterior. Okay, the sound goes in or it doesn't go in. Point. If it doesn't go in, we have a hearing loss. If we go in, we can hear the information. And for Tomatis, listening is based also on a stimulation which is coming also from the exterior, but that needs to be internally and intentionally looked for. To listen, I have to have the intention of getting the information. And for that, I have to be internally ready to go look for this information. So it's going to show us, the listening test show us how the person is internally or not ready to integrate. Is she willing or not to get the information? And when I say is ready, it doesn't mean, how can I say that? It's we can have sometimes we're not ready because we're stressed, because so it's the analysis. That's why Tomatis talked about psychology, because all our emotional or all the experience we have are going to have an incidence on our listening. And this means that there are notions like the one of a sensor, a captor. My ear has to be there to sense the information, to integrate the information. There's also a notion of choice of the information, and one of filter also that can appear in what listening is all about. So I can let in or not in function of my experience of how, if I'm tired, if I'm not tired, if I'm desiring to integrate, and so on. So consciousness becomes the main element on which everything is resting for listening. Okay, I have to be conscious of the information that I want to integrate to be able to be there and let the information in. And listening for Tomatis is the result of the desire to hear. So if we look at the Tomatis listening test, it gives us different levels of information. So there's a sensory level on the information. There's a physiological level. We can get physiological information on our client. There's also a perceptual and cognitive level on how our client functions at these levels. And there's the behavioral and affective or emotional level. So you see all these levels act together. And that's why for Tomatis, the listening test is a, quotes, a psychological test. And all these levels have to function together so that we are able to integrate correctly the information. The first one being, of course, the sensory level. If I have sensory difficulties, it's going to be very hard to get to the perceptual and cognitive levels. So that's why we have to integrate progressively the information. And when we look at a listening test, we're going to look at it in different levels in function of the difficulties of our client. So that's the big problem, and it's why it is so hard to interpret, and that is why also we have no recipe to give you for the interpretation. And that is not because we don't want to give you a recipe, is that unfortunately or by chance, we don't have one, if we can say that like that. Because the listening test is the picture of the listening of a person at a given time. Okay? So it's going to show us at one moment how the person is listening. But listening starts in utero and will evolve in function of our life experience. So it's something that is constantly in motion. Okay? So it changes constantly, except that some experiences in our life. Oh, wait, I have somebody who says that they cannot hear me. Let me see if there's a problem in the connection. Okay, I cannot tell you why, Mr. Holger Osterman, why you cannot hear us, why you cannot hear me, because everything on my board is fine. So maybe it's a question of connection. I cannot say. Okay, maybe you need to reconnect yourself or check on your microphone if the headphones, if your computer is well connected on the sound, because I cannot do anything on it on my board. It's okay. Okay, sorry. So as I was saying, listening is something that it's in constant change. Okay, from the day we are born until the day we pass away. And that's also why we cannot know on a listening test why the person has a peak or a scotoma, a hole on a frequency. A lot of times when we work on the listening test interpretation, when we give the course, people tell us, but what's that peak? What that's hole on the listening test? We could have an idea of what it represents in function of where it is situated. But what you have to understand is that when you look, and that's something that Tomatis always told us, it's that you have to look at the listening test in a global manner. It is important to look at the person globally and not just look at a peak or a scotoma, a point on a test. Because on top of it, you have to visualize that when we do a listening test, we are just doing a test on 25 points, on 25 frequencies. Okay, and there are thousands of frequencies that we don't test. So we are never sure that the peak or the scotoma is on that exact frequency. Maybe it's just next to it or a little bit further. Because if I take my frequencies on my listening test between 4,000 and 6,000, there's a lot of frequencies. Okay, so if I have a hole at 4,000, is it at 4,000 or is it at 4,500? So that's why we cannot tell you what it is. And also we cannot tell you what it is because it's in function of the person. It's the listening of the person. Why did they put a peak there or a scotoma? What did they do a hole in that area? I cannot know it. Only the person can have that answer. So we try to figure out, we try to understand why there is this problematics, why do they have this type of distortions, but we cannot give a precise answer on those problematics. So when we look at the listening test, we also have to visualize it as a living matter. It's something that it's in movement, like I was saying. And you have to look at your client. He's into a situation of evolution, and the test is also moving. So that's, for me, is something very important. A test is living, if we can say like that. Every single second listening has to adapt to the changes in the environment to let us integrate the information. And from one second to the other, I'm not the same. Okay, I'm changing, I'm constantly changing. And maybe from the second before I'm talking to you and now, I'm getting upset because my computer is not doing what it should be doing. Okay, so my listening is not going to be the same. So you have to take that into account, that listening is emotion, it's moving. So it's hard to interpret because you have to take into account all the different parameters and see how they interact together. And that's something that needs a lot of practice. That's also why it's also very interesting, because I keep learning things on the listening test every time I have a new client, because it's the representation of the listening of my client, and which is his own, and he only has that listening, that client. So you have to really, or the way I see a listening test, I have to put movement in my listening test. I have to see that the different parameters interact together. And for example, if I have curves that touch each other, I have to take into account also the selectivity. I have to take into account the spatialization errors. I have to look at the movement. Is he tired? Is he not tired? What's happening to my client? Because we are in movement, and life is movement. So we have to keep moving. So just a review on the different parts of the listening test, because I think, wait, I have a little problem here with my, let me do this because I cannot see my screen on globally. Okay, here. So when we interpret the listening test, remember that we divide the test in 3 zones, okay, that can overlap a little bit each other, okay. Tomatis used to cut the listening test from 125 to 1000, but it can go up to 1250, okay. It doesn't stop the vestibular area just at 1000, can overlap on the linguistic area. Then we have the linguistic area. Tomatis would set it from 1000 to 3000. And then we have zone 3, which is the cortical arousal area. So vestibular area, its impact on the body and the emotions. Then here we're going to look at the speech and communication. And on number 3, impact on energy and everything that has to do with the attentional processes. To that, you're going to have to add the laterality test. You have to add the selectivity test, and we have to also add the curves. So like that, it would be much better. Remember that we work on the ideal curve, which is a curve that is ascending between, it's not 50, but 500 and 2000 hertz, with a slope of 6 to 18 decibels per octave. Then you have a dome between 2000 and 4000. Okay, here we have the dome, and then it followed by a slight decline. Okay, so that's something also very important, because a lot of people tell us, but why it doesn't go up here? Because the ideal curve is shaped like this, because it corresponds to the minimum threshold curve. And if you look at a minimum threshold curves, when you look at the lower frequencies, you need more intensity to be able to perceive low sounds. And it's the same for the higher frequencies. You will need more intensity. So it's quite normal that the curve goes down in the higher frequencies. So this curve is not an objective, because we'll never get this objective, and it has no interest of getting this objective. Tomatis used to say is, when I look at the ideal curve and I look at the curve of my client, what is lacking in the curve of my client compared to the ideal curve? Is the curve of my client too low here, for example? Or is it too low here, or too low in this area, or too high in this area? So that's what he was looking, and he was saying, we need to compensate and add to our client's curve what is lacking in function of the ideal curve. Because anyway, we'll never get an ideal curve. And on the other hand, if I have an ideal curve, but I don't use the potential I have, it's no use. Okay, so that's why the ideal curve is just an element that gives us a possibility to have a reference on the analysis of the listening test, but it's not an objective to get ideal curve. because we will never get to it. And it's nonsense on top of it. So the parameters of the listening test, I'm not going to go through them again because you know them. So the balance, remember that the two curves have to be at the same level on the left or the right ear. Then the curves have to be symmetric between the left and the right ear. Then for questions of energy, they have to be rising, like the ideal curve. It's a rising curve, okay? And with the dome here, where you have the more hair cells in the inner ear, which gives the possibility to get more energy. That's why it's important to have a dome in this area, so you can have cortical arousal. Then I will talk about the relation between air conduction and bone conduction, because I think that's the most important part on the interpretation of the test. The spatialization errors. We'll talk a little bit about selectivity. I will leave the auditory laterality when we talk about active work, even if it's a very important parameter on the listening test. So the air conduction threshold represents the degree of sensitivity and affinity to a given zone of the frequency spectrum. When the message arrives to the eardrum by air conduction, it triggers an attention capture that makes the person focus on the message. So there's going to be focus and selection. I'm able to aim to what's interesting for me and select what's interesting and just leave the rest on the side if it has no importance for me. So that's very important. That's the work of the, if we can say that, of the air conduction. So it gives information about a person's ability to adapt to the external message while focusing on the message perceived. So you can imagine, since it's a question of adaptability, the work it represents, and that's why we cannot be constantly on a listening posture to integrate everything that has to be happens in everyday life, because it would ask for too much effort. So there are moments where our air conduction, we just let go things because we can integrate everything. So it represents how the tympanic membrane, the hammer, and the incus, with the hammer muscle, adapt to the sounds coming from the exterior. So it's the activity of the middle ear. I didn't talk about the stirrup here, even if it's part of the system, because for Tomatis, the stirrup, as you saw in the physiology course, is more related to the inner ear, to the work of the inner ear. But it's also important for air conduction. So it represents the effort of the person to integrate the incoming information. It conveys also the person's response to social life. I am present or not? Do I want to be present or not? What's my motivation? Then we will see if the client can be motivated or not. But the listening test with the air curve gives us the way our client position and is able to adapt himself to the outside world. Okay, so how do they interact with their surroundings? How the person aims to the outside, and if they are willing to aim, and then these elements, we have also to look at them with selectivity, because if selectivity is close, it's going to be very hard to be interested by our surroundings and to aim out the outside, since we have closed a curtain that's going to make that things take a distance from what we position ourselves. That's why Tomatis used to talk about a curtain when he was talking about selectivity, because I can have an excellent listening test, but if selectivity is closed, it's going to be very hard to use what's on my listening test. Then we have the bone curve. So the bone curve represents the person's real ability to receive physically and to to accept and to process an acoustic message. So the role of the bone conduction is to prepare the brain to receive, accept, and process the incoming information through air conduction without triggering emotional disturbance. Okay? So when we work on the bone conduction and when we look at the bone conduction, we're going to see how the person is really ready to receive the information in terms of emotion and attention on the acoustic information they perceive. Are they going to react emotionally? Are they going to react physically to the information? So we can have a hypersensitivity to sound or not. We can also have a hyposensitivity to the sound in function of the way my client is ready to listen. So it represents the inner ear and activity with the stirrup muscle. Remember that for Tomatis, physiologically, he considers that and not anatomically. Anatomically, the stirrup is part of the middle ear, but physiologically, he considers that the stirrup is part of the inner ear. And it has a function of settling the movements of liquid in the inner ear so that the person is ready to receive new incoming information, so that the body is ready and desire to open to the exterior. So that's why he had this differentiation on the physiological level between the small bones of the middle ear. He used to say we need to create silence. Okay, silence we all know doesn't exist because we receive millions of stimulations. And at one point, Tomatis said, to be able to be ready to listen to the incoming information, if you don't settle correctly the movement of liquid in the inner ear, you're not ready to get the information. You'll be overwhelmed by thousands of millions of sounds at the same time, and it's going to be very difficult for the body and on the emotional level to be ready to integrate the information. So that's why the stirrup is part of the inner ear for Tomatis. So it represents the bone conduction, the inner ear, and activity with the stirrup muscle. It represents also if the person is on a resting state or not on a physiological level. Just imagine the bone curve touching the air curve or the bone curve that is over the air curve. Well, the person is not on a resting state. On the contrary, there's going to be a lot of stress, there's going to be a lot of anxiety. The person is under many tensions, so the person is not anymore ready to integrate what's happening in the exterior. So the person is not ready to listen. And that's why we also always have to take into consideration the air conduction and the bone conduction at the same time and analyze how they function together. So a good functioning with an efficient implementation of air conduction as a focus mode of listening will depend on the state of the bone conduction. So this is why we must always consider air conduction and bone conduction relationship and not separate the two types of conduction. So when there are listening distortions between the air conduction and the bone conduction, it indicates that the person perceives the exterior in one manner that it's different from his inner listening. So we're going to have a dilemma. There's going to be a problem. If I'm not getting the same impression in the exterior and in the interior, my listening cannot be of good quality. And on top of it, I'm getting information which is contradictory, and I cannot be in a good psychological position or even on a good cognitive position or body integration of the information if you don't have the curves functioning together. So if, for example, we take the example of the bone conduction being over the air conduction, so the person there is not ready to integrate what is arriving from the outside, their inner life takes the control, and they are not anymore available for what is happening outside. They cannot adapt to the exterior because the blue curve, the air curve, which is the adapted curve, is not able to do that anymore. So in a certain manner, we can say that the emotions are ruling. These persons will have difficulties to aim, to focalize, to select, to analyze, to understand the external environment that is surrounding them. So what they will perceive can be confused. So they will have to make a lot of efforts to try to control this. But the problem is that efforts consume much energy. So that's the big problem. You can listen, but making so many efforts makes that you're going to listen a very reduced amount of time. What's tricky with all this is that we all do that. We all have listening difficulties in different fields at different moments. We all have experienced that when we have big emotional shocks, it's going to be very difficult to listen. Or when I'm very tired, also with no emotional shock, it's also very difficult to listen and to focalize, to select the information that can be interesting. So I will have to make big efforts. So these efforts, adults do it. They have a tendency to do this type of efforts because we are civilized adults and we try to behave normally. So we try to make efforts to so that people think that we are doing okay and everything is more or less fine, even if we are compensating. And some people compensate very strongly, so strongly that when you look at their listening test and you ask them, don't you feel a little hypersensitive? Don't you feel making a little bit too much efforts? They will tell you, no, everything's fine. I have no problems, even if bone conduction is over, because they've been into a compensation system for so long that they don't even realize that they are making efforts. And it can also be the same for children that do this type of efforts. And generally, when they do the training, the Tomatis training, they realize suddenly uh, that they were making a lot of efforts. And it's the same for the adults that are going to tell you, oh, I never realized how tired I was from listening. There's another solution when you have to make a lot of effort, is to just cut up with what's happening. And a lot of children have a tendency to do this with the external environment, and you just can stay in your inner world. And sometimes when somebody calls you many times, you can come out of your inner world. So it's easier for children to have this attitude than for adults. But it comes out to be more or less the same problematic. So the person can be hypersensitive, as you all know from the interpretation of the listening test. So hypersensitive to others, to the voice of others, to the presence of others, and to everything happening in the environment. And this can be emphasized in function, as I was saying, if I'm tired, if I have emotional programs, if I have problems in my family and my couple, in my friends, and so on. So they're going to also get too much information. And since they are not able to aim because the aircraft is not able to focalize, they are unable to know what's important or not. And that's something that happens more with children. And suddenly you ask them a question and they have no idea, and they answer sometimes even saying something that has nothing to do with what somebody is talking about. So adults, we manage this also better, but as I was saying, by making efforts. So the problem is that we can create aggressive reactions when we are functioning this manner, with the person getting mad for reasons that are not obvious for the person which is in front. So it's going to create also behavioral reactions that can be inappropriated or exaggerated. So the child or the adult will get into also psychological distress because of this type of of problematics. And on a physical level, they can be agitated, but also on a mental level. There can be important changes in their temper, in their mood, and on physical levels, you can also have somatic reactions because the body is going to react to let you know that maybe you're not handling things as well as you should. So sometimes we listen to the message or we don't listen to the message, but that's another story. But that's why when the bone curve has a tendency to go over the air curve, there can be quite a few somatization on a physical level. What happens when the bone curve is too low? Oh no, we're still on the over the air curve. So the person will have to use a lot of energy to handle this problematic. And as I was saying, if you use too much energy, you have less attention, less concentration, less memorization, learning difficulties, behavioral problems. So all this works together and you all know it. So they are not anymore available to their environment. So we have the contrary case with the bone curve, which is too low compared to the air curve. Okay, there's a big separation between the air curve and the bone curve, with the bone curve being too low. So here it means that the person is cutting with their internal world. So they're putting their emotions away. It's like I'm cutting a part of myself. In general, it's because the person has to put a distance at the perceptive and psychological level. For Tomatis, he would explain like a defense system as a protection. So they can generally, some of them have the air curve, which seems very well adapted to the exterior, but the inside is suffering in a very important manner. Because to cut with your mesh emotions is a long process. It's not something that happens from one day to the other. So it means that they have been in a suffering for quite a while, so that the ear has reacted in this manner. Or it can be also a traumatic, due to a traumatic process, an important one that makes that I have to cut out with my emotional world. And I'm just talking about the air and the bone curve, okay? Like I was saying earlier, we have to put all this together with the other parameters of the listening test. Because like I was saying, if I cut with my emotions and I'm to increase this cut, I put myself on a very right ear on laterality. It means that I have even increased this distance with my emotional side by using my very rational way of integrating the information and leaving my left ear to the side because it's the emotional ear. That's what we come out to. For Tomatis, everything that's on the left ear is in relation with the past, with the emotions, and everything that is on the right ear corresponds to the dynamics of the person, the present, and also his capacities to project himself into the future. Okay. You can also relate this with the laterality test and the interpretation of the laterality. So how the person will handle his emotions, how he handles everyday life. And that's why it's also very important that the curves are balanced and symmetric, so that emotionals and everyday life or the dynamics can function in harmony. Okay, and also on the way we integrate the information. And remember that for the laterality test, it's the same. It will show us if a person is too much on the left ear, that generally these persons are stuck in a certain manner in the past. There is no more movement. They're not able to advance, or to advance it asks for them for so many efforts that after they get tired very fast and they don't do it. So they don't go to, for example, the end of therapy, or they will change therapies constantly also. That's a possibility, or not be satisfied because there's no magical result. So relate all this also with the laterality test, and that's also one of the reasons why we try also to work when it's possible in function, of course, of the listening test, fast into active work, because active work is gonna gives us the possibility to get out of this emotional side and start handling our emotions and controlling them. And that's also why when we work on programming, we're gonna see in a few seconds how I look at the listening test, but I'm going to look at the emotional side and then see what are the capacities of my client to be able to move or not from this emotional side and be able to handle the emotions or not. Take into account the selectivity. The definition of Tomatis for the selectivity is the capacity of the ear to perceive a frequency variation in the sound spectrum and to situate the sense of the variation. Is it higher or lower? So it's a very simple test. You have to take into account that's a test that's very important that has to be done quite fast, okay? Because when you receive sounds in real life, you don't have time to think about if it's higher or lower, what does it represent. The brain and the ear has to be able to analyze them very fast so you can make sense of the information. So on a listening test, when we do a selectivity test, it is a test that's done on pure frequencies, so really one frequency compared to the other, which is something that you don't have in real life, since pure sounds don't exist. So in real life, you get complex sounds that you have to be able to analyze in a very fast manner. And if when you do the selectivity test, the person thinks too much, it's because they don't know. And we consider that it's an error, even if they give the good answer. When people ask you, could you put the one before because I don't remember it? In real life, you don't ask the person, could you please repeat what you said before because I don't remember it? Well, you can do it once or twice, but you cannot do that constantly, okay? Or you will have communication problems and people will think you are very weird. So selectivity should be open around 10, 11 years for Tomatis when the ear gets its plain maturity in the treatment of information. So for Tomatis, when selectivity is close, it's a protection system and a very important sign of anxiety and stress for the person. So to be able to handle that, they would put what Tomatis used to talk, an emotional curtain between the person and the world. So they perceive the information because they hear it, they listen to it, but there's like a filter. They're putting a filter between what they're integrating and what's really being said. So like that, it's more acceptable in a certain manner, and particularly on the emotional manner, they can handle things. So that's very important, and that's why selectivity also has other functions on the linguistic cognitive level, which are very important in the way on we are going to analyze sound and be able to separate each sound from each other, and then the capacity to integrate the information. But first, it's an emotional for Tomatis this emotional curtain is very important, and that's why personally it's one of the first things I look at on a listening test. Is the person able or not to analyze and integrate the information, or is the person already protecting themselves from what's coming and putting a distance from what's coming from the exterior? Just gonna drink a little bit of water. Concerning the spatialization errors, remember that there are significant spatialization errors. The information will arrive fragmented to the cortex, causing integration difficulties due to strong latency delay. So you can get a feeling of confusion in a complex acoustic environment and difficulties with sustained and selective attention. So this is a very important parameter that you have to also take into account with the laterality of the person. And also, I haven't talked about all this in function also of that you have to take into account in function if they are in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. I'm not giving you all this information because I imagine you already work like that. Okay, always look at the test in function of the free zones of the listening test. Like I was saying, I will talk about auditory laterality more in the third module when we talk about active work, because I cannot do everything on this. Normally I was giving 1 hour for the presentation. I'm not sure we will be able to do it in 1 hour, but I hope you have a little time. So we go back to our listening test with our 3 zones. Okay. So you can also look at it, or a way I look at it is to go from zone 1. So here in brown is zone 1, yellow zone 2, and purple zone 3. So from emotions to social abilities. So here we will start integrating everything that has to do with the sensory capacities, abilities. And if this is not integrated, my emotions would be ruling. So my social abilities are going to get very complicated. So that's why as we look on a listening test, when personally I look at the listening test, I always start from 125 up, because that's the way we develop. Okay, we are going to go from our emotions, and then as the brain develops, we integrate more and more capacities. So from emotions to social abilities, and also from interaction to symbolism. Okay, and in function of our development and how the listening test looks, I can see where the difficulties may be to decide what I want to work with. And that's why also, if a child or even an adult, but there's the problem with adults is that we compensate all the time. So we hide very well most of our difficulties. But that's something interesting with the listening test, because it can show us the difficulties the adults are compensating. So if I work with a child who has, I don't know, a dyslexic child with sensory integration difficulties, and he's unable to position himself into space and time, he's unable to analyze correctly the information he gets from the body to know what's behind, front, left, right, and so on. It's gonna be very hard for him to has access to symbolism, which will cause a lot of difficulties in his learnings. Because to be able to go to symbolic information, I need to be able to position myself correctly with my body, and be able then to construct in the brain with the cognition, and separate what is symbolic. I don't know if it's very clear. But I'm trying to think of an example to make it clearer. But what I often say, if there's no body, there's no way first that you can get to access of language which is developed enough for a good real communication, and then also to be able to go to abstract treatment of information. Okay, so they're going to have difficulty, and that's where you see some problems, like they're not able to when they read a problem, to get to the information that it's important, and be able to find a solution to the problem. So we can work on the interpretation of the listening test, looking at it in a little different manner with the sensorial system, the emotions, the body image, everything that has to do with sensory integration abilities, and is my client okay at this level or not? That's what I was saying to you about what Tomatis was saying. I don't know if there's a person who lost the sound. I'm trying to look if it's fine on my board or not. Just a second. I guess we lost the person also. Oh, okay, I'm back. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so like I was saying, is look at what's lacking in the listening test of your client. Okay, so is the central system well integrated? How does he manage the emotion, the image, the body image? Just a second, I have a problem with my computer. Opla. So what's the spatial organization? What's the spatio-temporal structuration? What are his capacities? His sensory integrations abilities? So everything that has to do with motor planification, the maturity of the reflexes, everything that has to do with sensory motor development. Because it's on that the rest is going to construct itself. And then we will look at what's the language ability, the speech ability, the communication capacities. Is the person able to differentiate himself from others? So we get to the linguistic stage, if we can think like that, which is a very mature cortical capacity. But for that, I need these ones to be integrated. And I would say these two go together. Then we have everything that has to do with adaptive behavior, individual autonomy, the capacities of learning at school, cognition. Okay, for that, if this is not integrated correctly, it's going to be very difficult. And sometimes, or one thing that sometimes I do is that when I work with adults, sometimes I forget about this part because I think it's well integrated, and since they speak normally and everything's fine, all this is okay. And I think that's something we have to be aware of, that sometimes there's particularly, well, the emotional, we all know about it, but sometimes the body image, all this will have an effect on the organizational processes. So to analyze the test in this manner, so I always look from the bottom to the top, because as we go up to the top, we're going to more and more complex ways of integrating the information and reaching linguistic frequencies which ask already a very good hearing and listening capacity. And that's why a child at the beginning, because of the nervous system maturity, is not able to speak at the beginning and will acquire these capacities as he grows up. So always analyze in function of the development, and then see what's happening around. It's to look at your clients and look at the globality of your client to try to understand how he gets the information and what can be in his environment or in his private life, making that the information is not able to go in correctly. So I would like to look at some tests with you. So some of my clients. So this is a girl. Just a second. I need the information on the client. Oops. Okay. So what is this? So this is a 9 years old girl. So you see, I saw her in June for the first test in June 2015. And she was coming to me because she had attention problems. She had difficulties to learn in class of history and geography. She had difficulties in spelling, a lot of spelling error. She had difficulties also when she had to do problems, mathematics problems. Um, so she was particularly coming for school learning difficulties, even if they're not very important, but she has these difficulties. She plays piano. She also plays football. She has English courses outside of school because her parents want her to speak English. She's right-handed. She has difficulties to find motivation to do her homework, and she also goes to speech therapies to speech therapy to work on the spelling and also to work on comprehension when she reads, because she has that problem. She reads quite fine, but she has difficulties to comprehend what she's the way she reads. Okay, if we look at the test, well, you probably all see the same things than I do, that, well, they're more or less balanced. We have a balance in the linguistic zone. There's more or less symmetric also. They're not too bad in a general manner. If I look at the general shape of the curve, it's for me, if I look like at it, it's a ascending curve, okay, even if we have distortion, but in a general manner, it's an ascending curve. Even if it's kind of more flat on the left side and also on the right side, but the inner shape, it's an ascending curve. So like I was saying, they're more or less balanced. We found them more or less at the same level, and there's a little lack of symmetry between both sides, or a big lack, if you prefer, of symmetry, particularly in this area. So how do we look at the general, what can we say about the general relationship between the air conduction and the bone conduction? So if I look at them on the right ear, for example, well, I notice that here in the linguistic area, I have a big separation between the blue curve and the red curve. So I know that there's something lacking at this level into the inner communication, if we can say that like that, which means that the person has cut off in this area, okay? So has put a distance between the exterior and her inner world, okay? And this is more on the left, so everyday ear, the dynamics of the person. On the other side, if I look at it, there's a little drop here also that we can see on in the relation between the bone and their curve, and they're at different levels, some overlapping of the red curve in different areas, okay, that we see also on the right. So this overlapping means that in some areas, in particular, wait, I have a problem somewhere. You don't see my test? Somebody's telling me that you don't see the test? You don't see the listening test? Can you see it now or not? Okay, thank you. So what does these peaks mean? Like I was saying, I have no idea what they mean in an individual way. I just know that on the integration in the vestibular area, this person has difficulties with hypersensitivity in this area. If I take what she was saying about why she was coming in her learning difficulties, and I see that in this area we have this type of problematics, So this is going to act first on attention, because if I cannot, this means that the body is not in a resting position. Okay, so she probably has difficulties staying sitting all the time. She will have difficulties at that level. Also, it will have difficulties on the rhythm, so that can also have an incidence on the way she integrates the information and she reads, even if she's a good reader. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't make compensations. Okay, that's also something very important, because often you people tell me, yes, but that's fine because she reads well. Yeah, but she may read well, but she's making compensation to read well. And as I said, you have to take that into account. So on zone 1, from 0 to 100, 1000, so you see we're going to have difficulties in this area, which means that at a sensory level, on the integration of the body, if we can say that, or sensorial integration, there are problematics. So I know that I'm going to have to first start working at this level before even thinking working on the other levels. Because if this is not settled, I'm going to construct something on the linguistic level which asks for very fine motor control. It's going to be difficult. And also for integration and comprehension of speech. And then when I go to the higher levels, I would say, of cognition, mental thinking, if this is not well settled, it's not going to be integrated correctly. So that's why I always concentrate. It's like when I look at my listening test, when I see this, I kind of don't look to the rest, if we can say like that. And that's why also for the persons who still work or that work with the Talks Up with the ELMA programs, that's the main reason, or even for the other consultants who work with what we used to call the pre-RSM, which is MNF, GC, or MU, the fundamental program. What's the goal of the fundamental program? The main goal of the fundamental program is to work in a global manner, to settle all the frequencies, because first we don't know which frequencies are not integrated correctly by the ear. Even if we have an idea when we look at the listening test, we know here there's a hypersensitivity on certain frequencies. Here we have a hole, so there's a hyposensitivity to certain frequencies. But as I was saying in the beginning, I don't know if it's exactly this one or maybe the frequency that's right next to it. Okay, so by working, so I know that this frequency makes my client react. Okay, if I'm hyposensitive to a sound, I'm going to perceive this much faster, which is going to make that I'm going to put my attention on these frequencies, okay, that maybe are not very interesting, particularly in this area, which is the vestibular area. Lower frequencies for speech analysis are not very interesting, if we can say that like that. So my ear is going to be concentrating in this area. So I need to modify that. And for that, I have to work in a global manner. So that's the main goal of the T and the F program, but much more the F program, because the T is more concentrated in lower frequencies to work in this area. So with the F program, what do? We are going to work on the whole frequencies, which gives us the possibility to, how we can say that, desensitize the ear to the frequencies that bother us, okay, like this one, like this one, like this one, okay, or even like this one, if these ones we cut them off, okay. So the first role of the F program is to act on the limbic system, on the emotional system, so it doesn't react too strongly to certain frequencies. So we apply a music which is MU, so that covers all the frequencies, so that the ear can get used again correctly to these new frequencies, because all this is going to go through the gating and surprise the brain and activate the controls on the cortical level, and that the limbic system will be less activated. So that's the goal of the F program. So if I look on zone 2 of my listening test, as I was saying, we have a problem in the communication area. This girl, you don't know it because I didn't tell you, but she's quite shy in her way she communicates. So we know that when you receive the person in interview and you talk with her, so that's an information you have. So this is going to confirm the fact that my client has a difficulty to open herself and communicate. So that is corresponds to what I have in front of me. So I know that there's a difficulty at this level, and she tells it, talks about it. So I'm going to try to also work on this. And if we go to, change the test to the next level, which is zone 3. So as we saw, we also have some frequencies here who are hypersensitive to the information. So the ear is going to overreact in this area. So I'm going to have to also work to settle that area. Then if I look at my test and at the spatialization errors, well, you see that there's a huge number of spatialization errors on the left side. Remember, that's the emotional side. So what does this mean? Okay, so it means that the integration of the information is going to be quite confused, but it also means when you have this, the slash, that it's the right ear who's answering for the left ear. It's like the right ear is bypassing in a certain manner the left ear and the emotional ear. So maybe she's so much emotional that the system of the right ear took over to help her manage her emotions by cutting on them. That's just a hypothesis, okay? But I think it's not too bad. So that's something to take into account because we have them almost everywhere. There's more than less, and a lot in the vestibular area, but also in the linguistic. And more exactly where she has problem, you find in her curve, you find the spatialization error. Quite a few on the left ear. We have less than 6, so it's not really significant. Then if we look at the selectivity, we have 2 errors on selectivity that we have to take in account. So it's on the left ear. The last error is around here on the listening test. So it means that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because I cannot look at the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, selectivity is close from here onwards up. Okay, all this area, we consider that even with 1 error, selectivity has to be considered close. So the more error, the more close it is, if we can say that like that. But we have a close selectivity on the left here, which, remember, is the emotional. So I think we are dealing with a very hypersensitive temper that needs to protect itself on the emotional level. And then if we look at the laterality of our client, well, we see that she's +9 here, which means that she is left-eared. And on the resistance test, she's in the middle. She's not left, not right. So it's not very good. She's very much, again, on the laterality test, on the emotional level. So she's going to have a hard time. All confirms that what we know about the girl. So very simply, I started with her a program. I did an F program when I started working with her to work progressively on the emotional level and try to settle and not trigger more emotions with the program. So that's what we get for after this first program. with the F program. So you see, it's interesting because if we look back at the previous test, this got bigger. Suddenly we start having a lot of errors on the on spatialization on the right side, and we still have quite a lot on the left side. We can see also that we only have one error in selectivity, but it's even more close than before. And on laterality, it's going a little bit. I think we were on 9, if I remember well, on the previous. And even on resistance, it's even not very good. So what can we say? Can we say it's better or not? I would say yes, because on the left side, I find an ear which is more ascending, which is there's less separation between the bone and the air. So for me, it's a more positive result. Now, what does the client says to us? So she says that she has the impression to listen better, to be um, more aware of what's happening around. She explains me that she has a very hard time to read the time. Okay, so she's 9 years old. So this goes within the integration and positioning of yourself in space and time. Okay, so that's very interesting. That's something that she didn't tell me the first time, because I guess she was kind of ashamed about it. So we talked about that. Then we also talked about, because she has difficulties to do homework. So we talked with her mother and herself to work on planning to help her organize her week, because she has difficulty of organization. She has difficulties also accepting certain limits. When her mother says no, it's kind of hard to accept them. So that's interesting because, wait, oops, come back here. It goes a little bit with this type of curve. When there's a distortion at this level, I putting a distance, I have a difficulty. The speech language area, it's a area of to integrate language. There are a lot of rules, okay? Because to speak to others, you have to have a comprehensive language. And for that, you have to accept some rules in the construction of a phrase, in the way you address others, and so on. That's one reason Tomatis used to say that the language, or the language for socialization, it was the father who gave that to the child, or the father image. Okay, not okay, because it needs to be very structured, and so I can have access to the exterior. And when we have this type of curve in this area, it means that there's a certain difficulty to integrate the rules of these linguistic rules, which are also some limits. Okay, and so it's not strange that she has difficulties accepting limits when you have this type of curve. And it's funny. Oops. Okay. I have a problem. And it's interesting to see that on her second test, it even got worse. Okay. And that her mother is talking to me about it, about the fact that she has difficulties accepting the limits. So it goes also with this distance she has put. And that's, I took this test because it's interesting. We always expect to have better tests when we do the program, and it's not always the case. And I think it's something that it's quite normal, because we need to give time to the client, to the person we work with, to integrate the information and be able to manage it. Okay, I think that some people see that they can see the test because it takes time to appear on the screen. I think it's in function of the, and I have times with I have difficulties with computer, and sometimes yeah, some people are saying me they lost the listening test. It's probably gonna come back on. I think it's just gonna take a little time. Tell me if you get it back. So I keep going. Okay, got it back very well. So it's when we sometimes we get worse tests, and as I was saying, I think the left ear is quite better than at the beginning, but what she's showing on the right side is it's worse. That's for it's clear, but it's part also of the evolution, and that things that have to take place. And that's why it's always good when we look at the listening test to see the good and the bad, because this indicates to me that she's positioning herself in a different manner, that she's trying maybe to change things, but for the moment, the defense system are very important and she has a difficulty, that she's kind of confused, and that's why also she has much more um, spatialization errors that are appearing. And on the other hand, she's also saying that she feels better on her listening. Okay. And I decided to, it may look weird to you, but to introduce reading at this level to work on with her, because I thought that she needed to work on this area, on the linguistic area. So I introduced a program with half an hour of reading, but we did 15 minutes of reading per day. And this is the test we got after this second program. So that's the test of the beginning of the third intensive. You see, I saw her not long ago. So we have a test on the left ear that's still better than before, which is much more appeased, calm, if we can say it like that, very ascending. So that's quite good. And here things are getting better. You see that the separation is getting less important. We have much less errors of spatialization. Selectivity is now open. We have here three little errors of spatialization in air conduction that have to be taken into account. I think there's still work to do on the level of body integration. And she tells me that and her mother also, that she's much more, her listening is much better. Her grades have gone up at school, so she has a better result. And she tells me that she feels better into everything that's space and time, okay? Even if it's still not perfect, because we have an imbalance at that level. And she also feels much more relaxed in a general manner. But you see here that for laterality, we haven't yet achieved a good positioning on laterality, we can say like that. So here on the third intensive, she's starting now. I'm going to continue working on reading. So I introduced just one reading. I keep working also with using global music, MU, for example, to keep working on the vestibular, and also working with some filter music up to 3000 more or less, so up to here, to also work and pull on the higher frequencies. So that's the test for this person. Okay. So I don't know if you have a little bit of time still or not, because I have some other tests. So I don't know if you want me to continue or if you would like to ask questions. Please let me know what you like to do. I'm open to your proposals. If you want to look at another test, I can. We can look at another test. Please continue with the test. Okay, let's go for another one. Okay. So here we have Laetitia. Laetitia, just let me get her file, just a second. So Leticia is a girl who is 7 years old. Let me check. Yes, she's seven. It's a little girl who's 7 years old. She comes because she has difficulties at school. She comes with her father. The father says me that she makes a lot of effort. She's very willing to learn, and she has a lot of um, joy to learn, and so on. She has a tendency to forget what she learns. She has much difficulties in almost all mathematics, in reading, in everything. Okay. Her father tells me that she's very into emotional. Her emotions are very important. She goes to the psychologist. She goes to the occupational therapist. She goes to the speech therapist also. She has very much attention concentration difficulties. Um, she has a tendency to speak constantly. She has difficult times to change her habits. She likes tendency to move a lot and so on. She needs a lot of help. She has not much autonomy in a general manner. She does some classical dancing. Um, Twice a week, she stays at school to do her homework with help of a teacher. She's very tired after school. She walked at 18 months. Her voice is very low. Because she screamed a lot when she was young, so she has I don't know how you say polyp on her vocal cords. Um, she likes to sing. She doesn't sing in tune. During the pregnancy and so on of the mother, everything went okay. They have moved places, so there was the move was difficult for Leticia to readapt to her new apartment, new school, and everything. She's has her body integration is quite bad. Um, she likes to play with dolls. She has difficulties playing by herself. She has two, one brother and one sister. One brother who's 5, and a sister who's 3, so they're smaller. She's in constant movement. She has always slept correctly, but she has difficulties to wake up in the morning. She eats very well. She has never had problems. She has a problem, psoriasis. I don't know how you say that in English. It's skin problems, okay, which are much in relation with stress. She never had ear infection. She's very resistant to sickness. She has a good health in general, but she has a lot of somatizations to stress. Um, she doesn't like to participate in school. She doesn't like to answer questions at school, and she has to be to sit in the first row at school to be able to concentrate. So, as you can see on her listening test, we have a few difficulties concerning everything. So let's say that the balance, we can say it's more or less the same, but we look at the symmetry of the curve, and then we have a big problems. So you can see that for her age, where normally we should get a test that is correct, that here the test is completely immature compared to her age, with huge distortions on the bone conduction on the left and the right ear. Okay, this means that there's big gaps in attention. It means that probably here the sound, she was probably hearing it, but she was not realizing that there was a sound, so she was not listening to it. And that shows the way she listens in a general manner. Okay, so imagine at school how she can integrate the information. It's almost impossible. On top of it, we look at the error curve, which is quite well positioned and it's not too bad, except that we have a lot of specialization errors. Okay, they have done hearing tests. There's no hearing loss. There's no hearing problem. So we have a very important listening problem. When we have errors like this, which are quite numerous, you have to ask yourself questions about the cognitive capacities of your clients, since when there's hearing problems, it's quite normal. But listen, the sound that you sound in one ear on the other ear through air conduction is that really there's a huge confusion in the person. So imagine how she can perceive the world around her, and on top of here, the incapacity to we have specialization errors almost in every frequency. So the she lives in a world which is on the listening level is just a huge confusion. Okay, she's never sure or anything she integrates, and her difficulties. It was something difficult with the father. I had to talk to him afterwards without the little girl, because he was making like the difficulties were not very bad, okay, that were much less than what I could see just by observing the Leticia and her behavior, her way of acting, and so on. So there were, in a way which is very positive, trying to encourage, but I was also realizing that the parents were completely not in the reality of the difficulties of their daughter, and particularly the father. But then I saw the mother later on in other consultations, and we were in the same situation. And you also see the selectivity, how close it is. So it's almost completely close. So no, she's completely cut from what's going on. And laterality, which is also here we are in the middle, and here the resistance is too low in the result, so no capacity to resist to the emotional side. So we are having huge problems at all levels. So here there's not even any question. I started with a program to work on the whole frequencies, type of F program. So just to try to calm down her nervous system, and the way to settle her down, because even if the bone conduction stays under the air conduction, this represents tensions, inner tensions. So imagine the body, there's inner tensions and a huge distortion. So the way she's physically integrating the information is very hard. Here we have the bone that goes over, even if it's only on one point, but that's why also there's a lot of somatization, which are even if they are expressed on the body, because she keeps so much the tensions inside. Because when you see this little girl, she's laughing constantly. She has, like her father was saying, a lot of joy living. Okay, of joy of living. Okay, so she's always smiling and trying to make you happy and so on. But I think she is trying to respond to what the parents expect, is that my difficulties are not as bad as people could think. Okay, which is the contrary. She has very strong difficulties that the parents, I think, didn't want to look at. Okay, so she was trying to control all that. And when the father says that she's very tired after school, I can understand why, because she makes huge efforts just to concentrate and be able to integrate information. So after the first program, that's what we get. So that's very interesting. The curves looks much nicer. That's for sure. But we still have a selectivity which is almost completely closed. because she really doesn't get the difference in the sounds, except when we get to the very very low sounds. So it means that all this is not analyzed correctly. So here, what's interesting is that well, there's less clearly less distortions. That she is more calmer and able to settle down or start to settle down. Um, and there's also a big problem in calculation to do mathematics and so on. So what they say is that they find her more mature. Okay, uh, she's the I had talked to the parents about trying to get somebody to work with the little girl, and that the parents stopped working with her, because I had the feeling that it was more the parents who were doing the work than the little girl. So there's a lady who is going to come to do the homework with her, and like that also there will be less tensions in the family, because they would spend a lot of time doing the homework, and that would create a lot of tensions. She's trying to be more autonomous and start wanting to do things by herself. And she was going to go with the school for a trip, so that was very good, because she had always refused to do that before. And she felt, the parents felt that she was doing better on on the sensory integration level. So we started the third session, and let me check what program did I put. And I started working with a program where I started using filters. Okay, I started using filters to try to work on the selectivity. Okay, I use some for people with level 3 or level 4 scans to go from 0 to 2000 to 0, 0 3000, 0, up and down, to try to help her integrate and open her selectivity. So filter sound, we work also with MU and Gregorian, because here I think it's very important to be able to continue the use of the Gregorian. So here, that's what we get after. So here's her third test. And I haven't worked on laterality for the moment, because I thought it was not, I decided to work very progressively with her. So you see that there's something better and much better on her selectivity test. The curves keep moving. I think they're also, uh, compared to the previous ones, we have a little bit less distortions, even there's still distortion, but it's getting better. The spatialization, I think maybe, no, we're more or less the same, a little bit less here, but one or two more on the right side. Here there was a during they decided to they're going to change her of school. Here we are at the end of the school year. Okay, in June in France, the school stops at the beginning of July. So they have decided that they were going to change her school and put her in a private school with a smallest structure, where the teachers could take care of her in a more individualized manner than in the public school. She keeps doing speech therapy and occupational therapy. She clearly has more self-confidence. She's more autonomous. She goes, for example, to buy the bread by herself. She started doing things. She even asked to go to school by herself, but the parents didn't want her to take, I think she has to take the metro or the bus by herself, and she's still kind of young. So there's quite excellent results that are taking places. And then we are, I'm finished, sorry. I've changed, let me see. Yes, no, there's still this one. Yeah, that's a test after, you see, in November, when There's a question. Could we get the presentation? Yes. And you also, I'm recording, so you will also get the recording, but you will get the presentation also. So here she's in the new structure. You see that selectivity has still opened a little bit. For the moment, I haven't continued for the program because I'm letting a little time go through, even if we still clearly the laterality has also improved because we're on the right. She has worked with forebrain at home, that's clear. The resistance is still not very good, but you see we have no more spatialization error. There's still a lot of work to do, but maybe not so much on Tomatis, except for the selectivity, but on reintegrating all the capacities on writing, on reading, on mathematics and all that she hadn't integrated before. And with the smaller structure, that is something that's going to be possible. And also with the lady that's working with her at home. So I think I will probably see her in we decided to do a breaks of almost 6 months to see how things continue to change. So I'll probably see her quite not in a long time. Okay, I just if you have time, I have another test I can present if you're okay, which is an adult, so that's also interesting. So this person is a lady who is an adult. And she comes because she had a burnout. She was born in 1974. So she's 40 something. Okay. She comes because in 2013 she has a professional burnout with also a big car accident. That's probably due to the burnout. And she was with the burnout unable to sleep. She also had a big depression with a lot of anxiety, and she took a lot of antidepressive, I don't know how you say, pills. Okay, so a lot of medication. Okay, and so she comes for this reason because she has heard about the Tomatis method and the energy. Being young, she had a lot of ear infections while she was with hearing loss. She sings a lot. She's in a choir, and she also takes individual singing courses. She has in her hearing difficulties to perceive certain lower frequencies. And she has, in general, a communication problem with others. She has the impression that nobody listens to her, that when she's in reunion, people don't hear what she says. On top of it, she's the only woman in the office where she works. She works for in the financial part of the it's the company that runs the electricity in France. And in her service, she's the only woman, so it's not very easy for her. And she has to make quite a few presentations every week. She had also troubles with one of her bosses, and that's part also of the burnout, who was, I don't know how you say that, but was mean to her, I was gonna say. She has a lot of allergies. She also have the nose that runs constantly. Right now, her sleep is okay. She when she got the burnout, she lost almost 1 kilo per day of weight. She has moments where she's okay and other moments where she's not doing okay. She's very anxious and scared of losing her sleep again. So she's kind of obsessed by that she could again go into the burnout and particularly the depression and not be able to sleep. She used to do a lot of sports. Okay. Um, what else? She's very nice. She tries to help everybody. But when she says stop, nobody stops. Okay, so nobody hears her. Her parents are quite old, and her father is very sick, so she has to take care of him. And she also helps a lot her mother, which is also older. Uh, she has two brothers, but one who lives in London, so he cannot help, and the other one who's lives in Paris, but doesn't help much compared to the parents. So there's always been a lot of stress in the family. They have also very much difficulty to talk together in the family. Right now, she's living at her parents because it's easier for her since she has to take care of the father cannot move anymore, so she has to take care of all that. So we decided, so you can see her curve is quite particular, okay? Because that's what also it's interesting is that we have a very ascending curve. One of the reasons is the hearing loss, but another one is the depressive state, because she didn't tell me at the beginning, but she attempted to her life, okay? And she was, after I learned that, she was in the second interview, she was internalized in a psychiatric hospital and put to sleep, if we can say that like that. I don't know how you say that, to rest, okay? Because she was really doing very bad. So very ascending curve, with the bone curve in a lot of areas where there's this hypersensitivity, okay, particularly here in the linguistic area. She's so that's one of the reasons nobody hears her, okay, because the audio vocal control is not of good quality. I'm even surprised that she's able to sing correctly. When we look at the curves here, it also explains on this area with the bone curve going up like that, all her sensitivities and her allergies that she can have. Um, and it really shows when you have a curve like that you're going to have to be very careful because it's too ascending. So in this type of curve, it's clear that we are not going to give energy because it's not what she's lacking. Okay, we're lacking, particularly if I look the way Tomatis used to look, we're lacking body and we're lacking communication. Okay, which are the things she explains about the communication. And if you look at the selectivity for somebody that sings, even if it's just a few hours, it's very, very close for an adult, okay? Which is a sign of important stress, important anxiety, and also that the problems, since it's quite close, are probably there for quite a long time, okay? So I was saying no communication in general in the family. So we did the first program. You guessed that I worked with the F program to work in a global manner. I put some low pass bands also to stimulate a little bit, like kind of a T program, if we can say, for the ones who, okay, where we work with low pass bands and general no energy at all. Okay, so that's the second test that we get. So if we look, what we can see is that there's less errors of specialization. Selectivity has opened. We are not going to recuperate in the lower frequencies because there's this hearing problem, but you see that the curves are positioning themselves in a much better manner. She was not able to do 2 hours per day because professionally it was not possible. So I worked with her 1 hour a day, so it took longer time. She has noticed that her listening was much better, that she makes less efforts also, that she has a better attention. She feels more relaxed, and she feels better speaking English. That was one of her problems with her colleagues who speak English, because it's an international company. And that's something where she's still bothered in conference calls. When they have conference calls, she has difficulties to understand. So she during the break, she used the forebrain, and she enjoyed it very much. She really used it regularly. So that's also probably why the results also have been because she moved quite fast. And we decided to continue the program, and I still decided to work in a global manner, because we have still important distortions on the vestibular area, even if the curves look better and the selectivity has opened. Sometimes when selectivity is open in this type of cases, we work progressively, because it means that defensive systems are going down and we don't want to go too fast. Sometimes it's better to go slower than too fast in some cases. And when you have ascending curves like this one, we or I advise you to work more slowly than too fast. So that's her listening test at the end of last year. So you see here that there's a lot of distortions. She's not doing very good at all. There's a lot of problems again at work. She got a new colleague and things are not functioning correctly between them. So I think she's probably responsible of some of the difficulties, but it's too early to work on that for the moment. And maybe that the way she's treated is also because of the way she communicates and integrates the information. So you see that on the emotional level, there's a big protection that's taking place, which is not good. But on the other hand, if you look at the curves here, they have come up quite nicely. So that's for me interesting. The selectivity is still open, but we have again much sensitivity, hypersensitivity on language frequencies, and probably one of the reason. And there's a lot of familiar problems. Okay, with the problems I was telling you about the mother and the and the and the father. Okay, so I saw her. I don't have the last test. I saw her last week, and things are again settling down. She the colleagues, which one she had problems, left, so that's very good. I don't know what the reason he left, but that's another story. And she's feeling better. And I started talking to her about the fact that, and I also had her work with the, I don't know if some of you know Aline Jaillet. She's a Tomatis consultant who's also a voice professional. So I asked her to work with her so she could help her hear her voice, and that people could help her hear her voice, position herself. And in the last interview I had with her, we talked a lot about that, about why maybe she don't want to be heard. What does it represent to her? What's her positioning towards her family? Like I was saying, that her brother is never going to help her with her parents if she doesn't ask for help. And that she's from a very Catholic family, and how do you say that? She's very, I have no idea how to say that. Well, she thinks it's something very important for her. So that's and she thinks that if she tells her parents that she cannot take care of them, she's abandoning. That's the word she told me. She will abandon them. Okay, which is nothing to do with that. Okay, and I was so I was trying to make her understand that she needs to ask for help, because she probably will go into again a burnout if she continues the way she is, even if she really sees a change right now, and we are going to continue the work with the programs. Okay, and I just want, before I let you ask question if you like, just show you this. This is interesting because it's the mother of the girl the lady I was talking before. So you see here that we have a very, very, well, there's the age, she's 76, but very, very, very flat curves. I think she's also probably a little bit into depression, not the same way than her daughter, but also with also a lot of tensions, inside tensions. And look at the selectivity, because it's interesting. It looks like kind of the one of her daughter, a lot of errors of spatialization. So I would just put that there because I thought it was interesting. There's something in common between, I think, the mother and the daughter. So we can go. I will open there's a problem here. The microphones, if you want to ask some questions. So the only thing is not to make noise because it's gonna be very loud if not for everybody. I'll try to open the microphone. Some of you are not plugged in with microphones. Okay, or if you prefer to ask the questions by writing in the question area. Okay, I see that. Just give me a second because I have to open the microphone. It's not very practical. Okay, some of them are already open. There's a question by writing. I will read and try to answer. Okay, so so the question is, we work with a lot of young children, 3 to 6 years old. I see a lot of air and bone confusion on the listening test. What do normal curves look like for young children? Okay. There's an echo, which is okay, I'm going to have to cut off the microphones. I'm sorry, because there's echo. So if you want to ask question, you're going to have to work or put your hand up on the panel, and I can open your microphone if you want to ask a question orally. So like that, I just open. You see on your panel, you have the possibility to raise your hand, and like that, I can open your microphone. So a normal curve, we consider that we can get normal curves in function of the maturity, the nervous maturity of the child, around 5, 6 years old. Okay. Before that, in a general manner, the bone curve is more over than under the air curve, which is normal since small children start communicating first more with themselves than with others when they start exchanging with the parents so on, and particularly when they start going to school. That's where when you get social communication, if we can say, or where you train your social communication, if we can say like that. So that's where we expect to have curves that position themselves correctly. I don't know if it's clear on the answer. Okay, there's a question regarding Roxolana. How do we interpret issues with the family, parents, etc.? You mean on the listening test? I don't have a tendency to work like that. Well, oops, just a second. When I look at a listening test, I try to confirm or not what the person tells me, okay, in function of her difficulties, why she's coming, and her problematics. Here you have to also take into account, which is not simple, that there's a hearing problem, okay, and that is going to have an incidence on her curves. You always have to take into account that when there's a hearing problem, you are lacking the real curve of the person, her psychological curve, if we can say like that, because hearing doesn't represent listening. Okay, and when we lose the hearing, we don't know what the curve of the person was before, the looks like before the hearing loss. And that's why it has to be, you have to be very careful when there are hearing losses. And Tomatis used to say you have to reconstruct the curve of the listening curve of your client in function of what he's going to be telling you. I would imagine that for Roxolana, the curve that we have here, her first test, is kind of what she communicates with her parents. Okay, the fact that we have this curve, which is very separated on the emotional side, on the affective side, which also represents on the more emotional communication, which also what goes on in the families, where you have a big separation between the two curves, which means first that she has cut off with her emotion, which means also that she doesn't share her emotions with others. And that's what she says, she doesn't communicate with, it's a family where they don't communicate. Okay, so when I asked her that she had to call her brother to come help her parents, she looked at me like I was talking in Chinese, because it's not something that you do. But I told her, you cannot handle everything. And she's the kind of person, um, she has difficulties positioning herself. If you look at the body position, the integration of the image, of the body image, is not good. So it's like you don't hear her voice, but you don't see her either. And that's very interesting if we make a salvage psychology, if we can say that like that, is that when she got her burnout, she lost I don't know how many pounds very fast. And it's like she was disappearing. Okay. And I think that's what she wanted. It was to disappear in a certain manner. Well, on top of it, she tried to really disappear. But you see, it's like everything joins together. And what I told her the other day is that to exist, well, I didn't tell her that like that, but it meant that to exist and to be present and to be heard, she needs to have her body. And she used to do professional dance, okay, which was very, very physical, but it was like to hurt her body more. Like it's or too much or nothing. Okay, there's no in between with her. And now we started talking about maybe doing sport, because she stopped completely, but in a much more soft way than what she was doing previously. Instead of aggressing, it's like since she cut so much with her emotions, she has no feelings. So she has to do very strong things to feel herself. By the way, when I look at this, it reminds me of Tomatis just at one point was working with professional dancers, and they had this type of curves where they cut in the body area, because when you dance, the body suffers a lot, and they cut in the sensations of they can get. And I think that's a little bit what she's doing. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry, I erased my. There was a question starting. Did you use the solution? I don't know. I lost it. I'm sorry. I erased it. Should it be a good idea to use scanned music with people having autism, ADHD, or dysphasia? Yeah, in function of the. Okay, we consider sometimes that autistic, or they have a completely closed selectivity or a completely open one. It's hard to say. Generally, we think they have a complete closed selectivity because they are in their world. But on the other hand, we could imagine also that it's completely open, and that's why they're unable to protect themselves. And that's also a reason they may be hypersensitive, with the fact that in general the bone curve is completely over. So sometimes it's good to that the selectivity close, or at least be good, so they can protect themselves. I think personally that generally it's more closed than open. So yes, I think it could be good if maybe not at the beginning, but when the sensory integration is better, yes, to start working, particularly when you start working on language, yes, I think it can be very interesting. If the F program is designed to work globally and specifically on the vestibular system, why it not contain? I didn't say that. I said that the F program is designed to work globally on all the frequencies. Okay, so it's gonna work from 125 to 16,000. It covers all the frequency spectrum because we want to, like I was saying, desensitize. It's the T program who works more on the vestibular part. Okay, so the F program covers the whole music, the whole frequencies, to untrigger the system limbic, if we can, to certain sounds, if we can say that like that. So it's more at this level. Okay. What about mixing scan music with mother voice? Okay, that's tricky, I was going to say, because the use of mother's voice is it's a specific work where we're going to progressively filter the music to go up and introduce the mother's voice. Okay, the objective of using the mother voice is to reinitiate something at certain point. And I don't think there's scan in the like that. We can say that I would use mother's voice, and then after we finish working on that level, why not use scan music, but not at the same time. We can. It's. I think the use of the mother's voice is very specific on the work we're trying to achieve with it. And we don't need the scans at this level. It's not the objective of the work of the mother voice. But afterwards, why not? That's quite something possible in a program. I mean, I'm not sure I'm following you, Yvon. um, you can, yeah, you can always use scan music. It's very, the scans musics are very interesting and very nice. But if I use mother's voice, and then why not scan? But to use mother voice, I have to prepare first the ear. We could also, but there's a process that generally we try to respect when we're introducing mother's voice. That's why I but there's no bad program. Like I always say, there are bad consultants. Uh, then if a program, as we will see in the part with on programming, has to be, we take 10 consultants, you get 10 programs, okay? And there's not one better than the other. It's what's your objective and how you construct your program. That's what's important. What music are you using and why do you use it? So if you want to introduce scan music, why not? I'm telling you no, but why not? If you have a specific objective in the use of the scan music, and if this objective has a certain logic, yes, I think yes. Then I answered too fast. I'm sorry. So it's there's really no bad programming. It's really the program. You have to think about what music for what I am working on, what do I want to stimulate, how do I want to stimulate, and then I choose my music. That's what's important in programming. If I want to work here in this area, or do I want to work here, or do I want to work globally, or just scan in certain areas, and so on. And in function of that, in function of the capacities of my client to be able to be stimulated the way I'm thinking. And that's where the listening test is also, it's also interesting, because it gives you that image that when we don't have on the for people who work with on level 1, and that's why also the programs of level 1 have to be with slower speeds and so on, because we use most of the music, but with softer speed, because we're lacking on the listening test. Oh, what is scan musics? Scan musics, it's music that are going to filter, it depends, progressively from one frequency to another. For example, I can go from 0 up to 2000 and then come back from 2000 to 0. So it's like a scan. It goes from 0, progressively filters up to 2000, and then it's going to defilter itself from 2000 to 0. So it's like we're scanning a specific area of the hearing, and you have different levels of scans. There's some that go from 0 to 8000 and stay on 8000. Others who go from 8000 to 0. It all depends. We have different possibilities. Generally, I have access to scans on level 3, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember if it's 3 or 4. Okay, bye-bye, Yvon. I saw that he was telling me he has to go. So I don't know if somebody raise their hand if you want to ask a question. I have no other questions here for the moment. Or if there's no more questions, we're going to stop here for this webinar then. Okay. Last question. Anybody? You want me to open the microphones? Okay, I open the microphones. See if there's a question. Somebody wants to ask a question. Okay, I'm almost through. Okay, the microphones are open. Does anyone would like to ask a question?
So Valerie, do you use programs you've designed mostly instead of the programs that come with the Talks Up units?
It depends. It really depends on the difficulties of my clients. So here on the most of the programs at the beginning, I use a lot the F program. And then really in function of my client, I will continue with passive or, like you saw, introduce reading on the second intensive, which can be done with the TalkSub program on level 2. So that's because I didn't filter much, so I could have used any TalkSub program and add up reading to them. Like the linguistic program, that's a program that I use quite frequently. So that's but then it really depends of my inspiration. Yes, you will get the slides, and yeah, I know it's very bad with the echo. I'll close the microphones. It's easier. Yeah, you will get the slides and you will get the video, since there was a video of I registered the presentation, so you have also the information that's not on the slide. So Solange will send you that probably tomorrow. I have to transfer the video, but you will have all this tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Well, since I don't see no more questions, well, I thank you very much for your listening, and I probably have some of you on the next seminars. And oh yes, I wanted to well, you will receive a mail from Solange with a specific table to do the interpretation of the listening test that you already know, with the general shape of the curve, the balance, the symmetry, and so on, because I would like you to present your test, but that we all have the same format. And if you could put all this on a PowerPoint presentation, because if you just send me the test and part of the story here and all that, it's going to be a big mess. So I would like you to prepare your case studies. So we will send you the format to do it on. And then you just put also the test. So I have a PowerPoint, and I just have to open the PowerPoint when you want to present your case. So you will get that also quite soon. Bye bye, Ronan. I didn't see you were here. That's nice to have you online. What's the green line on Olga test is the availability curve. Okay, it gives you an image. Wait, let me find where's my. Try to put the test back on. Wow, what's this? I lost the test. What the hell is this? No. Okay, well, the availability test is a test that we do generally. Oh, wait, here it is. Have to. Must be this one. Yes. Okay, if we look here, I don't know if you see, but you're gonna get the test. It should arrive. So I don't know if you see it or not, but here we ask the person, we do a test, and this is done under short test. It's done in air conduction. We send a sound, and we ask the person to tell us, and we increase the intensity progressively in air conduction, to tell us when the sound becomes uncomfortable. Not that it hurts, but that it's uncomfortable to the perception of the sensations of our client. And we look where the curves stand. Is it very close to their level of perception or not? And here you can see that it's not very far away. And this person, Olga, is quite sensitive to sound. She doesn't resist very much to sound. So the lower the curve, the better it is. Okay. And in general, it's interesting also to do it more in adults because it gives you a possibility to see also how the muscles of the ear are reacting and adapting to external aggressivity of sounds, if we can say that like that. Because normally, as we train the ear, the green curve should lower down. Okay. Sometimes people already have a very strong resistance to intensity of sound, so we're not going to get much results on that. But sometimes when you have hypersensitive persons, it's interesting to do the availability curve. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go. If you have particular questions that you would like to that we talk about on the next presentation, please send them to Solange. She will transmit them to me, and well, we'll hopefully talk again on the next webinar. Have a nice evening for the in functions, or a nice day in function of where you are in the world. Okay, bye bye, and thank you.